The history and influence of the Silk Road. A network of trade routes that existed from ancient times has connected China to the Middle East and Europe. Known as the Silk Road, these routes were in use until the mid-15th century, when access was closed to large areas of the Middle East by the Ottoman Empire. The route has only been known as the Silk Road since 1877, when it was named by the German geographer and geologist Ferdinand von Richthofen. In this video, I will discuss the history and influence the Silk Road had on Asia and Eastern Europe centuries before we had motorized transportation. The world's longest and most historical trade route for goods overland began thousands of years ago, once traders found that ferrying the products such as silk was very profitable indeed. As these early traders moved along the route, cultures, religions and ideas spread from east to west and back again. During the Han, Tang and Yuan empires of Chinese history, times were prosperous. But during other times, such as when in conflict, trade along the route halted. Not a single route, but a collective name to a number of ancient overland routes. The Silk Road was not actually a single route. It's a collective name for several ancient overland trading routes that linked China with Central Asia, the Middle East and Europe. The Silk Road began at Chang'an, known today as the city of Xi'an, and continued westwards through Xinjiang. The long and winding routes in northern China followed the Gansu corridor. This is a huge valley over 1,000 kilometers in length across what is today Gansu province. From Chang'an, the route crossed the Yellow River before arriving into the city of Lanzhou. The eastern end of the valley begins close to the city of Lanzhou and extends as far as the ancient city of Dunhuang. At Dunhuang, the route split into three, with the northernmost route crossing the Tian Shan Mountains, while the two more southerly routes cross south of the Taklamakan Desert and across the Tarim Basin. Why did trade along the Silk Road begin? China was isolated from the Western civilizations due to some of the world's highest mountains, some of the world's largest and most severe deserts, and the large distances involved. In addition to that, traders were at risk of attack from nomadic people living in those regions. During the Song Dynasty of 1600 to 1046 BC, then later the dynasties of the Zhou and Han, several products that were of importance to Western civilizations were created in China, such as silk, porcelain and paper, products that were highly prized in the West. But getting these products to the Western lands was not easy, as sea travel at that time was still too primitive, and only two overland routes from China existed. One was a tea-horse road from what is today Yunnan and Sichuan across the mountains to Tibet and further south into what is now India. The other route passed through the Gansu corridor, heading west through Xinjiang before splitting into several routes to various destinations across West Asia and even further to Europe. Silk was a valuable commodity, and while no money was in use at that time, other goods such as precious metals, animal skins, wool, carpets and glass products were bartered in exchange. The earliest trade along the Silk Road. There is evidence of the trade route now known as the Silk Road being in use over 4,000 years ago, when silk and jade were transported through the Gansu corridor as far as Siberia in the north. Silk products were found in an Egyptian tomb dating to 1070 BC. Silk was also found in a tomb in what is today Germany, dating back to the 6th century. By 300 BC, active routes along the Silk Road included trade to locations such as ancient Greece and Persia, through the province of Gansu under the control of the Qin state. Who were the traders? Goods transported along the route were not taken the entire way by the same trader. At various points along the route, goods were exchanged and then escorted the next step of the journey before being handed on again to the next group of traders. One important group of traders were the Sogdian that existed in territories to the west of Xinjiang in what is now Uzbekistan and Tajikistan from the 2nd century BC until around the 10th century AD. These important middlemen dominated this part of the Silk Road. The Sogdian had control of all trade across 1,500 miles of hostile territory. There are lots of Sogdian documents from this era that have been discovered in the city of Turpan in Xinjiang. The development of trade during the Han Empire, 206 BC to 220 AD. During the era of the Han Dynasty, enormous caravans of traders, consisting of hundreds of people, travelled from the city of Chang'an to destinations in the west. All too frequently, trade caravans were set upon by small nomadic tribes. In order to protect their trade routes, the court of Han sent an envoy, General Zhang Qian, to build relationships with the Central Asian states and their former allies, the Yurza people. Zhang Qian was captured by the Han and held hostage for 10 years before escaping. Eventually, Zhang Qian made it back to the city of Chengdu and was able to report on the lifestyle of the people further to the west. Zhang Qian reported that the Yurza was settled in a region known as the Fergana Valley and had achieved a high level of civilization, full of craftsmanship and wealth. Much of that wealth had accumulated through trade with India, the Middle East and Western countries of the ancient world. In addition, Zhang Qian reported on the swift horses the Yurza were using, as these were much better than the breeds of horses available in China at that time. The emperor quickly sent further groups to Central Asia to trade up for these animals. Among the gifts sent was silk of the finest quality. Traders from these western locations eventually arrived in Chang'an, and local goods were exchanged for products from ancient Rome, silverware from Persia, and precious stones from Central Asia. The remains of 3 of those once flourishing cities are able to be viewed today, as all were later abandoned for reasons unknown to modern man. Lulan, sitting on the western bank of Lake Lop Ne, is located about 200 kilometers or 120 miles to the south of Urumqi city before the city was largely covered by the shifting sands of the desert. Chiuza is located within the present-day county of Kyushu in Aksu Prefecture, around 400 kilometers or 250 miles southwest of Urumqi, and Yutian is now known as Hetian, a small prefectural city on the fringes of the Taklamakan Desert, around 1,000 kilometers or 600 miles to the west of Urumqi. The Three Kingdoms period, 220 to 581 AD. The Han Empire fell into decline and ceased to exist in the year 220 AD, and for the next 300 years the region was divided into 3 warring states. At the same time, barbarian attacks on the Roman Empire led to less trade along the ancient route. By the year 400 AD, the Roman Empire had collapsed, and trade along the Gansu corridor ended until the arrival of the Tang Dynasty in the year 618. Tang Dynasty 618 to 907. By the early years of the Tang Dynasty, control of the Silk Road in Xinjiang was under the tribes of Turkic people, and they allied with other small states at that time, operating in what is today Xinjiang, against the Tang. However, the Tang conquered the Turkic tribes reopened the route along the Silk Road and promoted the renewal of trade. In a short period of time, trade was once again flourishing. The Sogdian, who had traded with earlier dynasties, found favour with the Tang and rose to a status of prominence, surrounded by the security of the Tang-operated military and government. Sogdian merchants found themselves travelling as far as the Byzantine Empire, in total a distance of around 1,500 kilometres or 900 miles from the Tang Empire. One famous traveller along the Silk Road over this period was monk Xuanzang, who lived from 602 until 664. Beginning his journey from Chang'an west to Turpan before heading south to India. Xuanzang had been informed that the people of the region were brutal and wild, yet the monk reported that all he found was a warm reception. During this period, the Tang improved relations with tribes and kingdoms along the route. However, by the year 760 AD, the Tang had lost control of the west of the region, and trade along the route once again came to a halt. Song Empire, 960 to 1279. By the year 907, the Tang Empire had ended, and the next few decades led to warfare and no overall control until the arrival of the Song Empire, powerful but without control of the Gansu corridor. That area was a kingdom ruled by the Western Xia. The Song tried desperately to force control of the lands under the Western Xia so they could reopen the Silk Road, but their efforts came to nothing. Then, in the year 1127, things went worse for the Song Dynasty, when they were forced south of the Yangtze River, finding themselves even further from the lucrative trade route as the new empire became known as the Southern Song Dynasty. In the early 13th century, the Southern Song were attacked by the Mongols from the north, who themselves expanded across Central Asia as far as Eastern Europe. Yuan Dynasty, 1279 to 1368. During the Yuan Dynasty, trade along the Silk Road reached its pinnacle when its revival under the Mongol rulers promoted the trade route across their vast empire that extended across much of Eurasia. After all, Genghis Khan and those of his kin that followed conquered all the small states that existed in China at that time, actually unifying the nation, and built a huge empire during this dynasty. One of the more famous travellers along the Silk Road during this period was Venetian explorer Marco Polo, who eventually arrived in the Yuan capital of Dadu, now Beijing. One of his reports mentioned a special passport that was issued by the Yuan government to merchants trading along the Silk Road. This passport was actually a wooden board, gave a level of protection and free movement along the trading route. In addition to silk, other goods traded were medicines, perfumes, precious stones, and even slaves. Why did trade along the route end? There was not a single reason why trade ended, more a combination of reasons, some of those being technological changes, political and European advances in producing what had been Chinese industries. Europeans began producing their own silk and porcelain, leading to a slowdown and eventual decline of the export of such products along the Silk Road. Another reason was by the early 15th century, European trading ships were plying regular routes from the coastal waters of the Ming Empire, 1368 to 1644. And travel by sea was not only faster and more popular as overland travel became more difficult. The emergence of the Byzantium Empire and then the Ottoman Empire led to the access of goods across Western Asia being problematic due to taxes imposed or just refusal to allow passage from Europe to China. While overland travel across the Ottoman Empire became dangerous, the Ming Empire moved into a period of isolationism during the mid-15th century, while trade along the Silk Road all but came to a stop. While the routes through Central Asia came to a halt, the routes into the high mountain areas of Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan and India continued to see trade until the early years of the 20th century. The revival of this ancient trading route. Due to increased international trade and the improvement of land transport technology, the Chinese government began a revival of this ancient trading route in 2013 with the Belt and Road Initiative. This is largely in the form of freight trains following the old trading routes on modern lines across Central Asia as far as the fringes of Western Europe. That is all for this video. If you have enjoyed watching and it has shown you a little detail of life here in China, then your subscribing to my channel would mean a lot to me. Thank you for watching. Make sure you click on the link. Till the next video, and until the next time, goodbye for now.